Heather. Ah. Living the dream every day. Every day it is only gets better. I love to. We don't know tall, but I do have DeGiro 12 up for Pamela Price press conference. And making sure you see and hear me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Got me, got me?
else this morning. And once again, thanks everyone.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming. My name is Pamela Price, and I was the 30th District Attorney of Alameda County, elected by the people of this county in November of 2022. I come here today because I stand in the gap for vulnerable communities, for our Latino residents whose civil rights have been violated with impunity here at home, to the families of Vanetta Martin and Maurice Monk, whose deaths demand justice and answers, to the children and families in Palestine who are being killed with no mercy. Justice must be served, and Dr. King said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So justice must be served in the right way without favor, fear, favoritism, or hesitation. Dr. King also said that justice at its best is power, correcting everything that stands against love. We are standing here before you today in love, out of a love for our community, a love for our families, a love of justice. And that's what we need, leaders who are not concerned with money, but who are in love with justice. In 2025, we see the carnage to our federal government caused by the billionaire class at the federal level. In 2024, in Alameda County, we saw that same carnage, the destabilization of our justice system by a billionaire, a single billionaire, and his wannabe wealthy friends who spent millions of dollars on a recall campaign to destabilize our justice system. They tried to have a special election, and when that failed, they spent millions of dollars more to mislead the public and foster fear and division. Today we say no. Alameda County is not for sale. Alameda County wants real justice that does not bend for wealth, status, or political connections. I will be the district attorney who puts people first. I will go after corporate criminals, and I will hold law enforcement officers accountable, state and federal, accountable when they harm the residents of this county. Federal agents, including ICE, Customs and Border Patrol, FBI, DEA, and the Federalized National Guard, can be prosecuted for assault, kidnapping, child endangerment, vehicle violations like reckless driving or leaving the scene of an accident, and any other crimes against our residents. In jurisdictions across the country where district attorneys have stood up and said that we will enforce the law, ICE has been restrained. This week, the California Department of Justice launched an online portal that allows residents of California to report illegal activity by ICE. The online portal specifically says that a report to the Department of Justice does not replace reporting a crime to local law enforcement. And it is only when a crime is reported to local law enforcement that a district attorney has the power to hold someone accountable. So when crimes by federal agents are reported to local law enforcement, we need a DA who is willing to prosecute those crimes. In cities, again, where local prosecutors have basically said, F around and find out, ICE has been restrained. In Alameda County, I am here to announce my campaign for election in the June 2026 primary. And when I'm elected in June 2026, I pledge that I will protect our residents. I will say to ICE and any other federal agents who violate state law, F around and find out. No one is above the law, and I will stand for firmness in every case and fairness. Real justice applies to everyone. Justice cannot be bought by billionaires. Too often, we have seen now that Donald Trump is the champion of the billionaires. We have a DA now, an appointed district attorney who stands with the billionaires, with corporate polluters, with insurance companies who cheat, with rogue police who kill, and with prosecutors motivated by their own political agenda and ambitions and not the law. Donald Trump is a white supremacist racist. When our DA refuses to look at cases that we know were infected with racism and anti-Semitism, she is literally holding hands with racists and anti-Semitists. When you are the DA, as a lawyer, who is beholden to billionaires and wealthy interests in this county. Finally, I am inspired by the courage of the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein. I am a survivor of sexual assault, of sexual harassment, and domestic violence. I understand the trauma and the pain that women and survivors and victims go through. As a survivor, I understand the critical role that counseling and services and prosecution can play in healing survivors. That is why I formed the Gender Justice Bureau, which has now been dismantled. I have sat for 30 years with victims and families who have experienced trauma and had their most painful moments as they try to rebuild their lives. Before I was DA and when I was DA, and I will never allow their needs to be an afterthought. Their voices will be heard, and those who harm people in this community will be held accountable. As district attorney, my responsibility is to uphold justice with a people-centered approach, protecting our communities and making sure that victims receive the support that they deserve during their most vulnerable moment. The appointed DA is not doing her job for victims, and victims are telling their stories, and no one is listening. That cannot continue. I am here for our immigrant communities that are fearful of Donald Trump's policies and his Gestapo troops. I am here for our Muslim and Jewish activists who oppose genocide in Gaza. I am here for working people who can't afford to go to jail for 90 days. I am here for people and families struggling with drug addiction and mental illness, parents trying to raise their kids and not getting much support from our county agencies, people who want fiscal responsibility in the administration of justice in this county, and people who want real solutions to gun violence and not simply just sound bites or cheap political points. This is what Alameda County deserves. As a resident of Alameda County for many, many years, since 1978, this is what Alameda County deserves. In closing, this is not an easy road. Protecting our democracy today is not easy, as we see. There is fear, there is division, there's so much hatred. All of that came to Alameda County in 2024, and we all suffered for it. But we have the time and the opportunity to right a wrong, and that is what we are here to do. We have seen the all-out assault on our government and the right-wing tropes that have been promulgated and the lies that have been told. But we have the opportunity to right that. Those folks that have shredded our democracy and tossed aside the norms that we thought our political leaders would uphold, they need to go somewhere else. Because Alameda County is not for sale, and to resist Donald Trump, everyone must do their part. We must come together to protect our communities. The Wakandans are not coming, y'all. We have got to be the change we want to see in Alameda County. This is the time we must act to revoke the appointment and re-elect myself to serve as district attorney to complete my term. We need volunteers and donations to win this fight. So please look for us to donate before December 31st. We will have a volunteer portal up before December 31st. We need to show Donald Trump and his billionaire friends, whether they're in Washington or Piedmont, that justice is not for sale in Alameda County. Thank you. We will have a few speakers, and then following their presentation, then we will take questions.
Thank you. Next, we have Walter Riley.
Walter Riley, W-A-L-T-E-R-R-I-L-E-Y. I'm here to stand behind Pamela Price. I'm here because I want to see the forward movement of the campaign for justice. I know there will be differences around particular issues that people will have in the communities, and there are likely to be a lot of folks raising the issues around the recall campaign. But I want to support the campaign that the electors and the voters gave to Pamela Price in the first election. I want to raise up the ideas that Pamela Price has talked about today, and I want to be part of the community that increases the discussion and solidarity with the campaign across the country for reform in the district attorney's office, for an understanding there has been racism, class bias, and elitism in the prosecution of people for the entire history of this country and the entire history of my involvement in the political struggle, in the social justice movement, and the civil rights movement. And as a civil rights attorney and as a community activist, I expect to raise various issues around who's being prosecuted, what are they being prosecuted for, and what the number of charges are. People who commit crimes are going to be prosecuted, but they should not be looked at as throwaways, particularly our youth, particularly the young people, not just the juveniles, but the young people. The young adults should not be looked upon as throwaways. And our society basically has done that for people in the margins, the economic margins, the racial margins, particularly black people and Latinos in this country. And as new immigrants are coming in, they are becoming part of this marginalized community that is under attack. And that is something that our society cannot allow. And every aspect of our being has to be to fight for a new democratic approach. And at this point, when people are mobilizing, to be in solidarity with what's happening in other parts of the country and other parts of the world. The working people of this country have to move forward and have to take responsibility and accountability for making changes and not allow the elite, political and economic elite, to determine who is in office, how much money is being spent on campaigns, and who's going to win. When they can't win by open elections, they try and move, and have been successful here, with campaigns to recall. Understanding all the difficulties and dynamics that are involved in recall campaigns, that is not the most economic, not the most beneficial democratic process, I must say. Democracy requires more. And this is a campaign, and my part will be to focus on that approach to developing democracy, That approach to developing mobilizations of people around this county, people of all working class origins, people of all national origins, people who are not able to vote, should be involved in making decisions about what happens in the world that they live in. They work here, they pay taxes, they raise families. And I want to see that as a part of our discussion. And even though there may be differences with other folks, and maybe even in the campaign, I am going to be part of this campaign to build and focus on working class struggle, people in the margin, and a fight for justice, and making that the discussion. That's the role that I see that has to be played by vast numbers of people. Thank you.
Next, we have Margaret Petros.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Margaret Petros. I've been a professional crime victim advocate for more than 40 years. And I am here because silence is not an option when it's about crime victims' rights. For decades, I have stood beside grieving mothers and traumatized families who were harmed not only by violence, but by a system that repeatedly failed them. And this is not new. In fact, in 2011, more than 20 years ago, I wrote a formal letter to the executive at the Office of Criminal Justice Planning and the California Victim Compensation Board, documenting Alameda County Victim Witness Office pattern of denying state victim compensation applications and mistreating victims. Nothing changed, not for years, not for decades. So when I speak today, I do not speak from politics. I speak from lived experience and from long memory of what victims have endured in Alameda County under District Attorney Price's predecessors. When Pamela Price was elected district attorney, I did not immediately assume things would improve, but for the first time in a long time, I witnessed something different. A 15-year-old boy was murdered here in Hayward. His mother, already living every parent's worst nightmare, was denied funeral and burial compensation because her son should not have walked downstairs in his own apartment building. This is a kind of blaming and dehumanizing logic victims have faced for decades in Alameda County. So I contacted DA Price directly. I was very upset when the mother came to my attention, and I am an expert in California Victim Compensation Board. DA Price immediately connected me to the Victim Witness Director, Christina Molina. Appointed under DA Price, she listened, she investigated, and within 3 hours, the denial was reversed. That had never happened in my decades of advocacy. This was not a political shift. It was a moral shift, finally recognizing the dignity of victims. But instead of acknowledging progress, a wave of blame had begun. It was just within few months of an elected district attorney. Crime had been increasing in Oakland long before Price took office, but then everything was pinned entirely on her. Victims were told it's the DA's fault. In fact, at the scene of the crime, one of my victims was told, it's all because of DA Pamela Price. Police officers blamed her, prosecutors blamed her, everyone blamed her instead of doing their jobs. At that blame campaign, worked. A recall effort was launched, heavily fueled by insiders, and one of the most concerning pieces to me as a justice-driven individual, again, not here for political reasons, but because of crime victims' rights and to tell the truth. My concern was so serious when I watched the former district attorney, Nancy O'Malley, on the news, admitting that she worked behind the scenes to push the recall, then emerged publicly at the last minute before the vote to influence the outcome. I'd like everyone to ask themselves, why would a former DA interfere in a democratic process of her successor? Why from the shadows? Because this is not accountability. For me, it's retaliation, and it comes at the expenses of victims and our community. And now with the recall complete, victims are again slipping through the cracks. They are getting automated messages instead of answers, continuations. I received an email this morning at 11 a.m. from a respected businesswoman, a robbery victim, desperate, isolated, ignored. This is a system returning to normal. And the victim witness advocate was copied on this email. I'm not here to tell anyone how to vote. I'm not here to defend or attack any political figure. I'm here for the victims who have buried children, who live with fear and trauma, and who have been failed by the system for decades, long before Pamela Price, long before this recall. The truth matters. And the truth is this. For the first time in decades, I saw a DA who was willing to confront the failures documented in my 2001 letter. I saw victims finally listened to instead of blamed. I saw a wall of indifference beginning to crack. So whatever your politics may be, please ask yourself, who truly benefits from when reform is silenced and the same old system regains control? Because it's not the crime victims, it's not our communities, and certainly it's not justice. Thank you so much. And I do have my actually 2001 letter to the Office of Criminal Justice Planning documenting very serious violation of victims' rights. Thank you.
Our last speaker will be Arif Katif.
Good afternoon. I am pleased to be here to give my support again for the Honorable Price. I supported her the first time around, I'll support her again. Been in Alameda County for over 65 years, and I've seen it all. She's had an opportunity that was cut short by the recall, and I followed her plans and programs and policies that she had attempted to implement. One of them was the proliferation of guns in our county and in this community. Coach John Bean was a very good friend of mine, and I'm happy to say that I had the opportunity to honor him. John did not need to go the way he went, didn't need to go at all. Because of guns in our community, too many of them. We have a film that was out in about 45 days called The Rebirth of a City. It's the story of the Honorable Nathaniel Bates. It's an educational process that teaches how to govern. We need someone who knows how to govern. Pamela knows how to govern. John was also very active and helping to get my books into the Unified School District. The last one would remember their sacrifice. Before that, he got it in the public libraries because he believed in our community. He believed in our youth. He believed in everyone in the community. It didn't make any difference what color you were. It is whether you were genuine or not, whether you were prepared to meet the challenge and meet the moment to make a difference in our community. Pamela demonstrated that. It is my understanding that she had a program in place regarding too many guns and drugs too. I've mentioned that a couple of times, drugs too, but guns is what we want to put our emphasis on right now. There are just too many of them. The proliferation of guns has to be addressed. I want to know what happened to that plan that she had. I understand she may have even gotten a grant from the state to address the issue. What happened to that plan when she's no longer the district attorney? I think that's a question that each of us need to address and need to ask. In the meantime, I would say, let the people choose. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys all for coming today, and now we'll take questions if any of you guys have questions for Pamela.
So, Pamela, what do you have to say to those who voted to recall you, to regain the confidence to put you back in office?
Thank you. The question really is, what will I do better to protect public safety? We will focus on gun violence as we were. We will intensify that focus. Arif mentioned our report and the efforts that we were in the process of doing. We published this report in November of 2024, and it has gone nowhere. We got a $5.5 million grant from the state of California, and it has gone nowhere in the last year. So we will intensify our focus and resume our efforts to address gun violence in a serious way. We will resume our efforts to improve the delivery of services to victims in this county, which has been a problem, as Margaret has pointed out, for decades. The office we found was dysfunctional, disorganized, and essentially useless in terms of protecting and providing services and protecting the rights of victims in this county. We will resume the efforts, which we made significant progress in, to rectify that situation. Most importantly, it is a time of Trump, which is the threat to all of us. It's not just a threat to democracy nationally, it's a threat to local communities where federal agents have been deployed. We've had already incidents of federal agents unlawfully acting in Alameda County, and there has been no response. Again, we will not tolerate that. We will not hesitate to enforce the laws to protect our residents, to protect our immigrant communities. And we will address constitutional violations and make sure that this justice system actually functions for the people, regardless of your wealth, your race, your national origin, your zip code. This is Alameda County. It is a big county. We are one, and we will do everything we can to bring the county together to protect the whole county. So thank you for that. Yes.
Beyond rebuilding that trust within the community, how about rebuilding trust within the district attorney's office? You mentioned that there was dysfunction when you first entered, but I'm curious how you would envision that playing out if you are reelected.
One of the issues, thank you for that. One of the issues that has not been brought to light, we hired 200 people in my administration. At least 50 of those people have been fired unjustly, moved out. They have suffered the political retaliation of the appointed district attorney. So it is critical When we came into the office, we came in with a desire to build bridges, to create a cohesive unit. We spent time surveying the employees, which we did. We encountered stiff opposition from the prosecutors, but the prosecutors, and I should say the Prosecutors Association, because that's a small segment of the district attorney's office. They were the loudest ones. But we have inspectors, we have advocates, we have staff people. The staff asked us to hire more people. We answered that call. We will have to answer that again because of the terminations, because of the exodus of people who did not feel safe in the DA's office. So we will have to work on the culture for sure. Culture eats policy for lunch. And unfortunately, it's going to take time because this is an extremely dysfunctional, it was an extremely dysfunctional, unhealthy culture. When you have an office that has not seen change or real leadership in over 57 years since the last time that anyone challenged the incumbent district attorney before we ran. Things had become stultified, and it just takes time to fix that. And so we're committed to doing that again. We will bring in a new team. We will work with those who remain in the office. We will once again try to bring the Prosecutors Association into line with the modern vision of justice in this community. Yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
I want to ask about, you mentioned policy, I want to ask, would you do anything differently if you were elected once again? Obviously, since community aid in charge, she has worked to unravel a lot of the policy directors that you put in, such as those involving sentencing enhancements or transfer requests from juveniles to adult court. Would you re-implement those policies that you first instituted during your term and that have since been undone?
The question is, would we reinstitute our policies? One of the things that I don't want to do is operate like Donald Trump, like my predecessor, like my successor has the appointed district attorney. I don't walk into any situation without assessing what is working and what is not. And so to the extent that we adopted a policy in 2023, we did that after assessing what the standards were in the office and what the training was, and I will do that again. And so I will be guided by what the needs of the office are and by what the needs of the community are. We have seen a dramatic increase in the prosecution of juveniles as adults. And that increase, I say, is unjustified because you have to consider the recommendations in every case. The probation department makes a recommendation as to whether or not a child should be prosecuted as a juvenile or an adult. And so in our administration, we worked hand in hand with the probation department to determine whether or not what their recommendation was going to be and whether that was a recommendation that we wanted to dispute or not. And so that was our policy. And I will follow that policy again. If the probation department looks at the 5 factors and says this child should not be prosecuted as an adult, then we will follow that. If probation makes a recommendation that the child should be prosecuted as an adult, then we will look at that. Because again, it's a matter of working in collaboration with the experts that are able to determine what the appropriate opportunity is to rehabilitate a child. I am a survivor of the juvenile justice system, so that is deeply embedded. I was criminalized as a child, not because of what I did wrong, but because I ran away from home and because I got arrested in a civil rights demonstration. That's how American justice has handled and responded to young people. We come from a time where black children were stigmatized and labeled as predators. We see that language coming back. I heard it in 2023. I heard it and saw it in 2024. That is not the way forward. Donald Trump was the most vocal advocate for death to the Central Park Five, who turned out to be innocent. And one of the things that they taught us in law school that every lawyer should say, every prosecutor should say, is that you never want to convict an innocent person or over-criminalize someone whose life can be redeemed. That is the bedrock principle of justice that I'm committed to and that my administration will follow. This gentleman in the back. Thank you. Yes.
A couple weeks ago, we had the folly of current ADA Bates standing up in court and declining to oppose a motion to dismiss the case against former officer Jason Fletcher and murder of Stephen Taylor in San Leandro. That was April of 2020.
Yes.
Can you possibly explain why Ursula Jones Dixon has posed clear bias in aligning with the police officers associations throughout the county, and why she refuses to prosecute cowboy cops like Fletcher?
The question is, why is the current district attorney now aligning herself with police unions and refusing to prosecute officers who violate the civil rights and engage in deadly violence against our residents? And you will have to ask her that question. I can tell you that there has been, as part of the unraveling of everything without any thought or deliberation, there was an effort. There has been the destruction of the Public Accountability Unit and a clear bias in favor of law enforcement, a refusal to prosecute and hold law enforcement accountable. And that is dangerous in the time of Trump, because if you won't hold local law enforcement accountable, and the gentleman is correct, this office under the current appointed district attorney literally manufactured evidence to try to support the dismissal of the prosecution of Jason Fletcher. Fortunately, the court would not allow it. It was despicable, the manner in which it was done. It's unconscionable. But if you won't hold local law enforcement accountable, how can we expect you to protect us when federal agents violate our civil rights? That is a problem. I want to go to hidden.
In your news conference in June, you had no plans to run for DA. What has changed? With a 2-to-1 margin, virtually, of loss in the recall, you got a lot of ground to recover. How are you going to do that? You've taken it anyway.
Okay, 2 questions. Your first question was in June. I was not prepared to run. I was not contemplating to run, and a lot has changed since then. We have seen the invasion of Alameda County by federal agents and a political establishment and a district attorney who has said nothing, while other jurisdictions, DAs in other jurisdictions, have taken heed of that and have taken accountability to protect the residents of this county. That is not happening here. We've also seen increasingly the slide of our democracy, and again, the destruction of victim services, accountability for victim services. It's gone bad, and we cannot continue to be silent and let it happen. I can't relitigate, and I'm not going to relitigate the recall. We are moving forward. This is an election, and in an election, you have 2 parties, and the people have a choice. They get to choose which district attorney, which person will serve best the interests of Alameda County. And I know that I am the best person in this situation at this time. So thank you. Right. Yes.
What's your take on the current DA's decision to reinstitute mandatory minimums? You mentioned John Dean's case and the Skyline High shooting. I would imagine you were against that. Your thoughts about addressing gun violence in light of mandatory minimums for gun possession?
What we know from research is that mandatory minimums do not address gun violence. What stops gun violence is forensic investigation, is the threat of being caught. It is not when someone, as we've seen in John Bean's case, this gentleman had a lawful possession of a gun. And so the question whether a mandatory minimum would apply to him, it would not. So obviously that's not a solution. That's a political point that was made at a time when our community was reeling from this insane death, from this tragic death. And we've seen that over and over. We've had school shootings at Skyline. We've had school shootings in other parts of the county. We've seen gun violence explode in the last year. My administration was very focused on gun violence. We produced the first report on tackling gun violence, an epidemic in this county. We were working with the Department of Public Health on strategies. I convened 2 roundtable conversations with law enforcement in 21 and 2023 and 1 in 2024. We need to increase that conversation. And we will do that once we are elected. We will have monthly coordination between law enforcement. We will crack down on gun dealers and the illegal sale of guns in this county. So there are many other strategies that have proven to be far more effective than simply throwing out a mandatory minimum. There's one study out of Philadelphia, my good friend Larry Krasner shared with me, that they found that less than 1% of the people who have guns in Philadelphia actually commit a crime or a homicide with that. So you have to look at the broader picture and not simply throw out a simplistic solution or a simplistic option to the situation that will destabilize families, because if you put a mandatory minimum on someone that they have to go to jail, her proposal is that they have to go to jail for 90 days, that person is going to lose their housing, they're going to lose their job, they potentially will lose their children. That is destabilizing our community versus strengthening our community. Yes, sir.
I'm just going to build on that.
Yes.
You highlight gun violence, invasion, as you called it, of federal agents. So
Yes.
question on each point. Because I also heard you speak a lot about what you wouldn't do, essentially, in terms of gun violence. So could you just speak a little bit more about how you would crack down on gun violence? And number 2, what specifically did you see in terms of federal agents and their actions that you as a district attorney would have handled differently?
Yeah. So the question is, what did I see in terms of federal agents that I as district attorney would have handled differently? I was absolutely appalled at the assault on Pastor Jorge Batista. Jorge Batista is a member of this community. He is a member of the faith community. You do not shoot pastors who are praying for you. It happened in Chicago and it happened in Oakland. And nothing has been done about that. As district attorney, I would not tolerate that. I would insist that Oakland Police Department do their job, that they investigate the matter and bring me the facts. The last thing you want to have, anybody in this community wants to see someone be kidnapped in front of your very eyes. That is what is happening in Chicago, in places like Portland, in Los Angeles. It is going to happen in Alameda County. We should have a DA who is not willing to tolerate those kinds of violations of the law and of our residents' civil rights. Your first question, I don't recall what that was. Something, about gun violence. Again, in the report that we did, we took 6 months to work with the Department of Public Health, and we surveyed the number of gun dealers, the increase in gun dealers, the tracking of stolen guns in our community, and how they end up as crime guns. It's the data that is available to us, and we need the forensic resources that are scattered around this county to be focused on this problem. We need the California DOJ's Bureau of Investigation to help us provide the forensic resources to address this problem. We need to put together a comprehensive plan to address the gun violence in collaboration with law enforcement. We were on, and public health, and we were working in collaboration with Moms Demand Action and the Brady Group. We need to bring stakeholders to the table to address the problem. It is a multifaceted problem. There is only so much that law enforcement can do, but there is much that is not being done in this county. And so that effort was stifled and stopped, and nothing has been done since we left. The $5.5 million grant that we obtained from the state of California was to allow us to train our prosecutors on how to insist upon gun violence restraining orders, which is it's a red flag laws. These are critical tools that are available to us that we found that prosecutors were not familiar with. They didn't know how to follow up, and the court system had no way to effectively track that. And so we worked in collaboration with the court, with the Oakland Police Department, and our office to get that grant, to bring those resources to Alameda County. And when the state of California offered this appointed district attorney another opportunity to increase the amount of the grant, she declined it. We should not be declining financial resources that can be used to improve the administration of justice and reduce gun violence in this county. It is a public epidemic. And I am shocked, and I was shocked and stunned at the lack of the recklessness in which this issue has been addressed. Yes?
Are you concerned that the political landscape has changed since you were first elected? When you were first elected, many people were aligning themselves with progressive politics and solutions. It seems like the pendulum has kind of swung the other way. One of the major complaints during the recall was that you were not tough enough on crime. What would you say to those people who have concerns?
So the political pendulum has swung to the left. Progressive prosecutors in the November 2025 election were elected across this country. Larry Krasner won a third term. Prosecutors in Virginia won again. People recognize that the value of the policies that we espouse are for the needs of the people. What people have recognized now is that the billionaires are subverting our government. Donald Trump stands for the billionaires. Our appointed district attorney stands with the billionaires who spent millions of dollars to buy that seat. And so I believe that the residents of Alameda County, when they have the opportunity to have a real choice, and again, another conversation about how we do justice here, will choose to move forward and not go backward. We cannot go backward. Thank you. Yes.
You spoke a lot about concerns about the Trump administration and wanting to fight that if you become district attorney again, but a large reason that led to your recall was critics were describing what they thought were lenient policies on local crime issues. So why run for this post when typically a district attorney's office is limited to enforcing state and local laws?
Well, the question is why run for this seat when district attorneys are limited to, I'm not sure.
You talked a lot about wanting to fight the federal administration and what you're seeing and not happy with what's going on from the Trump administration. So, but a lot of the concerns from some of the local issues that led to your recall were what critics described as lenient policies on local crime. So why, with the limitations of a district attorney's job, run for that position as not something where you could fight the Trump administration more directly?
Well, the question, the supposition is that the district attorney cannot fight the Trump administration. The district attorney most definitely can and should fight the Trump administration in Alameda County. The district attorney is the local law enforcement officer and has the duty to enforce local laws that are violated by people who are sent here by Donald Trump. That's number one. Number two, with respect to the critics, there's an old saying that a lie travels around the world faster than while truth is still putting on its shoes. And so, there were a number of lies that were promulgated, and unfortunately, the truth is, under my administration, we prosecuted crimes at a higher rate than my predecessor had over the previous 2 years. The data that we had that showed the advances that we were making in prosecution was available to the public, but it was not reported. And instead, what the public was fed was a lot of untruths. And so we are here to correct the record about that. And I believe that when people actually look at what we did, they will know the truth, and the truth will set us all free. All right. On that note, I'm going to let you all go. I want to thank you for coming here today, and I hope that you will report accurately what happened here today, and that the public will get a fair and meaningful opportunity to choose their representative in this election without regard to the billionaire class that has dominated our politics in 2025. Thank you.